In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I combined a bunch of images together to create the final image that you see here. I use a combination of UFRaw, Gimp, layer masks, and layers to get this job done. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a base image. Essentially, this is the image that the majority of the information is going to exist in. Off of this image, we're going to build different versions of this image to modify it to make it darker or lighter. And you'll see what I mean as we go on. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to right click on this photo here and open it with UFRaw. Now, this is a RAW formatted photo. If you don't know anything about RAW, I highly recommend that you look into it and that you check out the benefits of shooting RAW, which is a blog post I've linked somewhere on this post, probably above the video. This format gives you a lot of extra photo editing power, and I highly recommend that you look into getting one. Being a RAW shooting camera. A RAW shooting camera is usually available for the same, can be available for the same price as to what you paid for a normal camera. A lot of people assume that they're thousands of dollars, and that's not true at all. So first things first, we'll go ahead and edit this image. What we're going to do is we're going to lighten it up somewhere where we're happy with it. Now, the only part of the image I'm worried about in this for the base is a couple of things. First off, I'm only worried that the background stays black. I'm also worried that the front face here is at a lightness that I like, this front part of the box. Making sure that this spot here, the spotlight, is at a good brightness, and I'm also making sure that the labels on my Yingling bottle are to my satisfaction. I'm not worried about the sides, and I'm not really worried about the side of this box, nor am I worried about this flap here. All I'm worried about is the brightness. So I think it looks pretty good right about there. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to click on Wilbur here. He's going to send the image to Gimp. Alright, now once the image is opened in Gimp, what we can do is we can start making some changes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the extra stuff here on the sides. We want all of this to be black. So all we have to do in this case is simply click on the paintbrush tool, scale it up. I recommend using a fuzzy brush just along the edge just to be safe, and just kind of filling in this area and also filling in this area. There you go. So now that looks a lot nicer. All we have to do is get rid of this flap here. This was actually, whenever I took the photo, the box was kind of falling apart, so I had to tape it in place. And as you can see, it still looks terrible. But that's okay. We can easily get rid of this with Gimp. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the free select, or I'm sorry, not the free select, but the scissors select tool. And we're going to click right here, and we're just going to start tracing along this edge. Now, if you don't know much about the scissors select tool, what it does is it automatically detects what the edge is. If you're familiar with Photoshop, it's somewhat similar to how the magnetic lasso works, although I must admit this version is actually a lot easier to work with, just because you just click like so. And if you run into any kind of an issue where it doesn't lasso right, you can click and you can modify how it works. Okay, so now that we've created that edge there, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a big loop all the way around it, and I'm going to close it. And now here's the important part. You have to make sure you press enter, because if you don't hit enter, it will not make your selection. If you hit escape, you're going to have to do it all over again. So make sure you hit enter. So now you'll see that you have your selection created, and what we're doing with that selection is we're using it as a guide to keep us from going over the edge of the box. It's going to define the edge. I'm just going to click on the paintbrush tool, and as you can see, I'm just kind of brushing away that edge. Okay, so you hit select none or Control Shift A to deselect all. Zoom to extent, which is Control Shift E, and that'll bring you back out. And there's the base of our image. So in the next step, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to enhance the side of this box and begin enhancing the bottle. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to darken up this left side of the box. How we're going to do that is by opening up the raw file that our base image is in, and we're going to darken it using the raw file, and we're going to export that new version of the image into Gimp, and then we're going to use nothing but this side flap of the darker version using a combination of layer masks and layers. So what we'll do is we will switch back over and we're going to open up our raw file with UFRaw. So here's our file, and it was somewhere around in here whenever it was later. That's our later version. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just click on our curve and we're going to darken it until the side of this box looks like something that we're happy with. And I think that looks pretty good, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Wilbur, and he's going to export the photo out to Gimp. So there's our photo. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click Select All, and we're going to click Edit Copy, and we're going to paste this image into our base image. So all we have to do is hit Edit Paste or Control V, which is the shortcut. Now what happens is it creates a floating selection. This is essentially Gimp's way of saying, I have a selection here, I see you pasted it in, but I don't know what to do with it. What layer do you want me to put this pasted image on? We don't want to put it on a layer, we want to make it its own layer. So we're going to right click on it and click New Layer. So now here's the darker version of the image on top, on the top layer, and then we have on the bottom layer our base image. As you can see, the side box is a little bit darker. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this image and we're going to click Add Layer Mask. Now if you don't know how layer masks work, I went ahead and linked a layer mask tutorial in this blog post. Go ahead and check that out first, and it will help explain how these work. But in a nutshell, what it is it's a image that runs parallel to your layer. So if you right click on it and you click Add Layer Mask and you set it to black full transparency, what it's going to do is it's going to make this entire image transparent. And that's because the color black is recognized as transparent in Gimp and the layer masks in Gimp, and white is recognized as not transparent in layer masks in Gimp. So if we color the color white, in this case what it's going to do is it's going to make the top layer visible, and thus making the image darker, since they're both the same exact image, just one's a little bit lighter or darker than the other. So if I click with the color white with my brush tool and I start brushing, you'll notice that wherever I'm brushing, it's darker. Well, the only part of the image that we want to be darker is the side of the box. So all I have to do is with the color white, just come in here and just brush that in a little bit darker, like that. And there you go. So now, if you look here, you can see it's a shade darker. I could have probably went a little bit further with this and made it a little bit darker, but that's okay. And you'll notice I went ahead and switched back over to black, and I cleaned up this edge a little bit, because whenever you color with black, what it's going to do is it's going to make that layer invisible, thus making the image lighter where you brush. So I hope that makes sense, and like I said, check out that layer mask tutorial if this part doesn't make sense. The next step, we're going to go over how to make this bottle really pop out. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to create the top part of this bottle. So we'll switch over to our selection of our photos that we took earlier, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to open this file with UFRaw. Now what you're going to find here is that the top of the bottle looks really pretty nice. The rest of the image doesn't though. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this image, we're going to mask everything else off except for the top of the bottle and only use this piece, because that's the only part we really care about anyway. So go ahead and export it out to Gimp. Let Gimp do its thing. And it's going to, don't save, it's going to create us another version. So hit Control A to select all, or select all, and then click Edit Copy. Switch over to your base image and click Edit Paste. Right click on the floating selection and click New Layer. So now we have two versions of the image. We have the base image and we have the green glow version. Now of course the only part that we want to keep, like I said earlier, is the top of this bottle. But looking over the before and after, you can see that the image is a little bit off. The tripod must have been moved a little bit in the process of taking these photos. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line them up. And in order to do that, all I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my topmost layer, which is the green glowing layer, and I'm going to adjust the opacity down to about 30%. So that now I'm able to see both versions of the label. And as you can see, if I hide the layer and show the layer, you can see that they're not lined up. But if I click on my move tool and I just move it up just until they're just about perfectly lined up, it's going to look a lot nicer. So now we're going to crank our opacity back up to 100%, and we're going to mask off everything else. So just right click on your layer mask and click Add Layer Mask. Set it to black full transparency and click Add. Now we're going to use a white brush, and we're just going to brush that bottle back in. Now I don't want to use, I want to use the original label, so I'm not actually going to click on that. And note that I'm using a soft brush when I'm brushing this in, and watch how I do this. Whenever I get down close to the bottle, I'm just going to kind of go back and forth a little bit until it really creates that edge for me. It's a really nice, easy way to sort of rough in an edge like that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and create the shine on the bottom. And I'm just doing the same exact thing I just did, just kind of roughing it in with that soft brush. Get rid of that. So now we're going to zoom to extents and look at a before and after. And as you can see, it looks dramatically different, but still fairly convincing. So that's how we do the top. The next thing we're going to do is create the shine on the bend on the bottle right here. Okay, so next up we're going to go ahead and create the center part of this bottle. The steps involved in this are very similar to the last time. The only difference is we're going to use the clone stamp tool a little bit here to help clean up our photo. So we're going to go ahead and go to our raw photo and right click and open it with UF Raw. And you'll find here that we have the glow that we want in this bottle. I'm not going to change anything in UF Raw. I'm just going to go straight over to exporting it out into Gimp because I want to maintain some kind of continuity in the lightness of each refraction that we're gathering here. So now that I have the photo open, I'm going to select all with Gimp, click Edit Copy, switch back over to here, and Edit Paste. Right click and click New Layer, and there you go. Now we have two different versions of the same image, but again, the same problem happened as it did last time in that the alignment is a little bit off. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to adjust the opacity down, and I'm going to just move this until the Yingling logo matches up really close. And that actually looks pretty good right there. So there's a before and after. They're pretty close. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, or add a layer mask to this image. But first, you know what? I'll go ahead and add it now. So right click and click Add Layer Mask. Set it to black full transparency and click Add. Click on your paintbrush tool. Set it to white. And make sure you're editing the layer mask. And just brush in that information. Just kind of rough it in along those edges there. Switch back over to black and fix your label as necessary. We don't want this flashlight, so we'll just get rid of that. Like that. Okay, so that looks pretty good aside from this huge spot right here and the somewhat awkward looking reflections here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my clone tool. The clone tool is a perfect tool for this because what it'll do is it will sample pixels over here and it's going to put them over here. It's essentially kind of like a really cool way to copy a bit of a photo. So I'm going to hold in control and I'm going to tell Gimp where I want it to sample. And I'm going to click right here and then I'm going to release control. You'll notice that there's a crosshair there and there's a brush sitting there. Now what's going to happen whenever I brush over here, just like the normal brush tool, is it's going to actually brush that color in for me. So let's add that a little darker right there. Actually, I didn't like those results. Let's click a little bit closer to the center. There we go, that looks a little nicer. Let's scale up our brush maybe. There. Okay, so now the only thing we don't have to, the only problem is now is we have this weird floating bit here. And that's okay because our edge is being defined by our layer mask, so we can just, with our layer mask, color in the color black, just mask that little bunch extra garbage there off. So that is pretty well how we fix that. And actually, I don't think those look that bad. I think that looks pretty nice. It kind of gives a little bit of extra detail along the edge. So next step, we're going to go ahead and add another small blur here on the side. Okay, so next up, we're going to go ahead and create a bit of an edge right here. This is essentially going to be the same exact steps that we've done for everything else so far, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to start by right-clicking on our image and click Open with UF-Raw. And it will open it up. And here, you'll see we have a very small glow right here that it looks really nice. So we're going to use that. And we'll go ahead and click on Wilbur. He's going to export the photo out. And we're going to just click Select All or Control A, and then Edit Copy. Switch over to the base image that we're working on. Make sure you're not editing on the layer mask. Click Paste, right click, and add a new layer. So now we have the same image thrown on top. And as always, the alignment was slightly off, so let's go ahead and fix that up here by adjusting the opacity down and moving him over until they're lined up nice. So adjust the opacity back up and look at it before and after and just make sure they look okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and right click on our layer mask and click Add Layer Mask. Set the layer mask to black and click Add. Click on your paintbrush tool and you're going to set it to white and just brush that nice glow in. And that one actually is really simple to do. That really didn't take much more editing outside of that. If you wanted to, you could create another one here, to cover up that little black spot. And actually, I think that it will look better with that. So we'll go ahead and add that next. Okay, so like I said, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit of glow right here on the side. And in order to do that, I'm just going to repeat the same exact steps that I've done so far. I'm going to open up my raw photo with UF-Raw, take a look at it, make sure it looks okay, and export it out into Gimp. Now, what we're going to do with Gimp this time is we're going to have to clean this one up a little bit because it's a little bit on the messy side with the glow. The glow got a little destructive here, and it got a little carried away, so we're going to have to get rid of some of that detail, but that's not that big of a deal. We can do that pretty easily. So we're going to go ahead and select all, and then click Edit Copy, switch over to our base, make sure we're not editing our layer mask, paste it in, right click, add a new layer. And then again, we'll just check our alignment, adjust the opacity down, use the Yingling logo as reference, line them up, adjust the opacity up, turn them off and on, and as you can see, that's still not quite right. It's still a little off, so let's take a little further and double check. Looks like it's a little low. There we go. That looks better. There we go. That's pretty close. So now we're going to go ahead and add our layer mask. So right click, add layer mask. Set it to black. Click on our paintbrush tool. Set it to white. And we're going to scale it down a little bit with our brackets. And we're just going to kind of brush in that extra glow. Carefully though, because we don't want to mess up the in-between. Actually, now that I think about it, I think this glow should probably be below every other glow layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to move it down a couple of times. Never mind. Forget that. We'll just leave it alone because it actually looks better as is. So, and we're just going to switch between white and black and just kind of try to get that to blend the best we can. And do the same thing down here. Just little short brush strokes, like I said. There we go. Clean up our logo because we got all that extra information from the image that we don't want. And that looks pretty good for the most part. It kind of got messy with our edge, so we're going to go ahead and just kind of clean that up with Gimp. We'll add that information and what we'll do next is work to get rid of that with the clone stamp tool. A combination of clone stamp and masking. So we should be able to just mask little by little, just whittle away at it until it's flat along the bottle. And again, this is another moment where those Wacom tablets are just awesome. And actually, I don't think you're going to have to take it any further than just whittling it away. That looks pretty good as is. Let's just soften up our edge here a little bit with the other layer. I believe that was our top one. Yeah, see the extra junk there? So we'll click on our top layer. I'm just going to kind of get rid of that with the layer mask. Okay, so there we go. Now all we got to do is add the bottom part of the bottle, and we'll be good. Okay, for our final step, we're going to add the bottom of the bottle. And to do that, it's going to, again, be the same exact steps that we've been doing so far. So we'll switch over to our raw folder, open up the raw image, and here you'll see that the bottom of the bottle looks pretty nice, although pretty much everything else in the image, including the incredibly bright light that came out of the flashlight being behind the bottle and everything else, really just needs to go away. So all we have to do is export this out to Gimp and mask it off just like we've been doing all this time. So Gimp's going to do some thinking. It's going to create the image for us. And all we have to do is select all, copy, switch over to our main image, paste them in, right click, add a new layer. Check our alignment, so adjust the opacity down until the Yingling bottles are both appearing, and move this guy up until they line up nice. Adjust our opacity up, do it before and after. Those are pretty close. So now all we have to do is mask off everything except for the bottom part of this bottle. So we're going to right click and click Add Layer Mask, set it to black full transparency, and click Add. Click on the paintbrush tool. Scale up the brush a little bit. We're going to use a pretty big soft brush this time, and we're just going to kind of rough this in. Actually, first let's use a smaller brush and then rough it in, and then we can use a bigger brush to clean it up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to get this bottom part here. Don't really worry about your edge quality too much. In fact, I recommend that you go over the edge a little bit on some of your parts just so that you can clean it up anyway. And you're going to set up your scale a little bit. And what we're going to do now is we're going to clean up the outer edge. We switched over to black by hitting the X key so that we can make this all go away if we want. And now I'm just going to, with the soft brush, just slowly get rid of that extra stuff along the edge. And I'm just doing short brush strokes and just getting rid of little bits at a time. That way if I mess up somewhere, I can undo. So that effectively cleaned up the bottom of the bottle. Now all we have to do is clean up that little bit of yellow right there that kind of looks funny. To do that, we'll just scale the brush down so that we don't mess everything else up in the process. Just kind of go around and just curve it out like that. Zoom to extents, and there you go. There's your final image, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Actually, I think that bottle looks a little bit too bright. We could also just adjust the opacity down to make this a little dimmer, kind of like that if you want to. And I think that looks a little nicer. So I think I'm going to go with that. So there you guys go. I hope this tutorial helped, and if you guys have any questions, please leave some comments in the comment section below. And also, don't hesitate to subscribe to my email subscription and send me an email directly. I will be more than happy to answer any of your questions you have.